guy's like, yeah, man, I'm going to send you some money because clearly you need to get some action. And he didn't say action. He said a part of the lady that he spelled ridiculously. He spelled it Poosie, and it was amazing. And then it was all U's with U's, and some was SUM. And I'm like, he's like, just don't get an underage prostitute. And I'm like, that is a wild comment for my video. But I said also, I'm not above taking a fool's money. So I gave him my Venmo handle, so. And so this week on Jaywalking, it's just me. I'm flying solo today. I'm going to talk a little bit about back to school stuff and all the things that I've been doing, getting ready. Really excited to share how my school year's been going this year versus past years. We're going to get into the Philly Karen dilemma, which is actually a bigger piece that we're going to talk about, which I'm really excited for you to hear about. I've had some videos that hit big this week on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And I got a lot of fun things coming up, so please follow me at jyodercomedy, jyodercomedy.com. I have a lot of great dates coming up. I got some board teacher dates coming up this fall. I'm going to be in Albany, Springfield. I'm going to be in Wilkes-Barre. I'm going to be in East Brunswick, New Jersey. So check that out at boardteachers.com. Make sure you're liking and subscribing here to Jaywalking Spread. Pass the message out. Anything you could do with shares and likes and comments, we love. And I've got some fun projects you're going to hear about coming up in addition to Jaywalking. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, guys, well, we're back, and it's just me today. It's just a solo episode, and you know what? I'm good with that. It's the beginning of the school year. You noticed that last week we didn't have an episode. 2 reasons. One, back to school. A lot of new things happening, so we'll be talking about that today. But I also have a new project going out. So if you watched any of the episodes with Meredith Steyer on here, she was on 2 episodes. We actually starting a new project coming out that we're kind of excited about. So everything's kind of pending in the name, but the general gist is we're going to restaurants around the area, Philly, suburbs, that whole deal. And our goal is to test if the restaurant is fat friendly, right? Both by menu and venue. So we're like looking at the booths and and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be giving restaurants ratings like plastic sporks versus like Michelin tire ratings. So we're having a fun time with it. So we have an episode that's in the works right now. So check out my YouTube. If you don't already subscribe to Jay Yoder Comedian, please check that out on YouTube. It'll be rolling out through that sometime this month. So we're excited about that. But now we're back. We're back with our weekly Jaywalking. And like I said, today it's just me. And it's sort of like a back to school episode because we're today was the 3rd week of school because we started before Labor Day. And I know if you're an older person, you're like, that's outrageous. We've never started. When I walked to school uphill both ways, we started after Labor Day. We started the week before with the students, and we had like literally 5 full days the first week, which we've had the past 2 years. But prior to that, we kind of eased into the year, right? Like normally what happens is like 2 weeks before the kids come, like the rookies report to training camp, all the new teachers come. Because I usually go and run 2 small sessions for the new teachers. I do a session on, it's a buffet, if you will. I like to talk about buffets. It's a buffet of like all the tech tools that we use at the school that we have subscriptions for, that we use for one thing or another. And I basically put them in the chair like they're Neo in the Matrix, and they learn Kung Fu, right? They learn digital Kung Fu. And then the second day I come back and we just kind of zoom in on the learning management system that we use, which is Canvas, and sort of help them get their classroom, their virtual space kind of set up. And so that's the first week. So that's usually like the 2nd week of August. Then the 3rd week of August, there's 3 days that the whole faculty come in. We have our meetings. We do our bloodborne pathogen trainings. We do our boring meetings. We try to find a little time to set up our classrooms and go through all the documents like the IEPs. And then the next week, the students came. But we had 5 days. Then we had Monday off for Labor Day. Then we had a 4-day week. And now we're back to another 5-day week. So it's just kind of off and running at this point. It feels like we never left. For me, it's a little different. This year, I'm in the middle school, and I'm teaching 3 classes. I teach a 8th grade Latin class, 8th grade Spanish class, and a 7th grade Latin class. Last year, I taught 3 predominantly freshmen, but there were a mix of upperclassmen. And last year was just Spanish 1 in the high school. And can I tell you, the difference between those two buildings is huge. And the difference between that particular freshman class, you'll often hear, if you're a teacher, you get this. If you're not a teacher, then there's sort of a theory about a particular class of students and maybe how they behave and how they interact with each other. And this year's freshmen and this year's sophomores, at my school anyways, were known particularly for being a little rowdy, maybe a little uncouth. But this year I have seventh and eighth graders, and so like last year was a really struggle. I kind of felt like I was riding a bull for 45 minutes every day, but then three classes in a row. And I was in three different rooms, so I'm constantly changing. I'm constantly invading somebody else's space, and it was just a nightmare. Last year, honestly, for me personally, worst year in 20 years of teaching. Just the kids didn't listen, and at the high school level, like they're allowed to have their phones with them, and so now you're playing like CSI Verizon with them. Now, when they come in theory, in a perfect world, which we all know we don't live in a perfect world, they come in. You think of a shoe caddy that you might put on your door if you're someone who has a lot of shoes. Well, they have a shoe caddy. They all have a number, and then they put their phone in there, and then they go have a seat, and they're not supposed to touch it until they're leaving the class. But here's what the problem. You have to then play CSI Verizon. Did they put their phone in the cubby? Hey, you look up there. There's 24 cubbies. There's 24 students, but there's not 24 phones. Now I got to investigate. I got to get the forensic unit in there. Then all of a sudden, Jimmy's telling you that he doesn't have his phone that day. Oh, okay, yeah, I believe you, a 14-year-old, don't have your phone on you. Oh, my mom took it. So what am I going to do, frisk the kid? And now we're 10 minutes into class. I haven't even thought about teaching. There's a fire in the corner because the other kids are starting a fire because what else are they going to do? And you can't even get into the stuff. So that, for me, was the biggest headache, was just the weapons of mass confusion that these kids would spill out. And you can't even get to your bell ringer. You can't even get to, your due now, whatever you call it, to engage them right out of the gates. And then when you got in there, none of them were asking questions. Literally the only question I got asked all year last year out of my three classes and 80-some students was, can I go to the bathroom? So, so it's just like, what are we doing? You're learning about a different language and different culture. You're telling me you don't have a question? That's crazy talk. So it was very disheartening. I tell you, after last year, I spent most of this summer saying, let's keep playing the lottery. Maybe I don't have to go back this year. And now it's my 21st year. I'm back in the middle school, and man, what a relief. I was so kind of nervous going back into a building because, I've taught in all 7 buildings in our district. We have 5 elementaries, we have a middle school and a high school, and over the last 21 years, I've taught in all of them. I used to do the exploratory where you're like the fun uncle, where you go into like each of the elementaries and you go to each class once a week and you show them the world. I'm like Aladdin on my magic carpet. Let me show you the world. And then you kind of, I used to use Nearpod, so I would take them on these like cool VR field trips and, sing songs, learn numbers, colors, just the basics. But they were curious. They had questions that weren't, can I go to the bathroom? And I'm seeing that with the current 7th and 8th graders. They're a dream. And some of my classes are small, like 20, 27, so you're not seeing like in the 30s. So that helps because obviously if it's harder to get around. I mean, if I spent 1 minute with every kid in that 27 student class, over 50% of the class is gone. Things like I don't even check papers anymore for homework. Like I do like the bank deposit on the app. I don't know if you do this, but my PNC app allows me to deposit a check like from my kitchen counter as long as it's, clear. And so with the kids, I just have them submit photos from their webcam into Google Classroom. And that way I'm not being irresponsible with my class time. Because if I went to all 27 kids and looked at their paper, even if I only spent 30 seconds with them, 14 minutes are gone. And that just seems like an irresponsible use of my time, especially given the technology we have now. So a lot of them, I'm in the stages of training them to kind of turn their time card in. I'm like, hey, you want a grade? You want to get paid by your boss? Then you better turn your time card in. So these are real world skills that these kids need to be able to do anyways. So let's leverage this technology that we're giving them, and let's do it in a way that makes sense. And now they have a copy. I have a digital copy. If I have parent conferences, I can pull up the digital copy and show them their student work. And if that gets shoved in a trapper keeper, then so be it. Who cares? We both have a digital copy of it. So it's just a good system. It's something that kind of I did before COVID, but I think a lot of teachers after COVID were like, I don't want to touch these papers. I don't know what, kids before COVID were gross. I mean, I don't know what kind of liquids were on this paper, but now since COVID, I think kind of pushed everybody to kind of do this system. And I love it because I've been doing it before and it's just easy. So I'm in the middle of training the 7th and 8th graders to kind of do that. They'll be like, do I have to turn this in? I'm like, well, only if you want points. If you want the grade, yeah, I'd turn it in. So, having a lot of fun with them, but they're curious. Oh, my 7th graders, there's 27 of them at the end of the day. We're talking about the Roman house and we're following this one particular Roman. And so, their records left behind from Pompeii as to who he was and the jobs he held. And man, they had so many questions. I got asked more questions that first day of that 7th grade class than I did at all for maybe the last 2 years at the high school level. So I love that they're still curious. And that for me was like, what a relief. I'm excited to go in every day. I'm excited to spend time planning my lessons. Last year, it was like I'm planning a lesson, but it's like, yeah, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Like that's how I felt every day planning a lesson. It was very transactional. It was just like, here's the work, here's the goal, here's what we need to accomplish. You got to turn this in by the end of class. Listen to me for my little lecture or little game I'll try to do up front. And then if they participated, great. But a 5-minute activity was taking 15 minutes with them because then all of a sudden this corner's talking, so they didn't hear the instructions. So now they have no idea what we're doing, and it was just one of those things that as a teacher, you get really disheartened if you feel like the kids aren't listening and they don't care and you're trying to do fun things and you're trying to make it engaging. And, I can't compete with the games that they're pulling up on the tabs on their Chromebook or on their phone or Snapchat. I can't compete with that. So, I think a lot of teachers feel that same way. But this year, so good. So grateful. So, yeah, I'm really excited. Every day is it's just fun. And that's what it should be. Teaching this year is what I always imagined teaching, why I love teaching. And it was just, I have information and you don't, and let me find a way to share it with you. And it's not like I'm a sage on a stage. I'm not up there like a one-room schoolhouse. The way I view education or like the modern, like the classroom, and I think a lot of, even if you went some of the old heads like John Dewey, if you studied education, you would have heard names like John Dewey, Horace Mann, things like that. I think a lot of what Maslow and some of these guys that our education system is based off of, I think a lot of what they were talking about was just making real connections with people. And so I think of the classroom like a kitchen, surprise food, a sous chef. Like basically I'm the head chef, they're the sous chefs. We're all in the kitchen together making this meal, and then we're going to sit down together and enjoy it. And it's got to be this balance. And so, I had a kid the first day come up, and before I even like greeted the class, she just was like, am I allowed to retake tests? And I'm like, whoa, first of all, who hurt you? like, hello, welcome. But like the first thing out of their answer was, can I retake tests? And I'm just like, wow, think about that for a second. Like, all right, so you're already being like, listen, I'm going to do this thing not well the first time. So I already want to build in another life for it. And I think I don't like the air of that. I'm like, hey, listen, if you fall, there's going to be a safety net. The train's never going to leave the station without you. But to come in with that level of anxiety and have that be the first thing you're going to say to your teacher was like, oof, I knew I was going to have to help this person kind of calm down. It's kind of funny because it made me think of my daughter, my 9-year-old and I, Katie, when I come home at night, if I get home from a gig and it's not too late, or if I don't go out that night, before she goes to bed, we've been watching TV together. And originally it was like Boss Baby, which the movie, and then there was like a series on Netflix. And whatever, I was half watching it on my phone, whatever. And then I'm like, all right, let's find something that I can engage with. That way I can kind of put my phone away. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm just watching this. And so we ended up on Dr. Pimple Popper, which wouldn't have been my first choice, but it makes sense because her and I had been watching these YouTube shorts by a guy named Nate the Hoof Guy for a while. And it's sort of the same thing. There's something wrong. He's going in there, and then sometimes there's some gross stuff in there. But like her and I both didn't mind it. At first, I thought I would have not had the stomach to handle it. But then we're watching Dr. Pimple Popper. And listen, I'm not in it for I'll watch it now. I'm at a level now where I can watch this show and eat a meal. Like that's how comfortable I am with this show. But there was a couple times like I put it on and I sat down to eat something and I'm like, oh, I can't eat this right now. And now I'm totally over that. But for me, I'm more of like the emotional thing. I love the story behind it. So it's like these people sometimes come in broken because they've got something on them, a deformity, and it's in such a stark place that if they go to the bank, they go to the grocery store, they hang out with family or young kids, somebody's going to say something. Like my other daughter, Alicia, if she sees somebody with something different, she's compelled to go up to them or talk loudly about it. We were on a cruise ship, I might have mentioned, she saw a woman with prosthetic legs. And she's like, why does she have robot legs? And I'm like, oh, those are prosthetics. And then she thought I said prehistoric. And she's like, they're from the future. I'm like, oh, come with me if you want to live. Like, let's get out of here. But like, I know for the person who had that deformity, having people bring it up or look at them, like, they're self-conscious. And then they go in here and sometimes, Dr. Lee, she's able to kind of see that they're very, very timid, and she knows she has to kind of bedside manner them a little bit. In the same way I felt like I had to do that with this student. I knew clearly the student was coming in with some baggage, and I had to like be like, hey, you have to trust me. You have to know that like whatever you've had in the past or however it went for you last year, you got to at least give me a chance to do things my way, because I promise you I do things differently. Right? That's sort of always been my mantra, is like me as a teacher. Like a lot of times I go and speak, and, I'm gonna have a big conference coming up where I'm doing a keynote at the end of the conference, and part of what I'm talking about is my own journey with education. It's like for an early childhood education conference, and so I'm giving them a snapshot of like me as a student, and then my transition to me as a teacher, and then now me as a parent with a student, and how my lens has changed and how things have happened to me in life and adversities I've come over have kind of helped me process that. And I think, we all have that. So if I can help somebody get through that, if I can help the student get through that by calming them down, or I can think back to the teachers I've had, good, bad, ugly, and sort of either do model the things that the good ones are doing, or figure out, well, what was it that made the bad ones bad? And was it that they were bad, or was it ones that they were like at the end of their rope? They weren't being supported. I have a different lens for some of those teachers now than I did when I was a student. Now that I'm on the other side of the curtain, right? Like we know there's no Wizard of Oz. They're just men and women behind a curtain. And so I think that perspective has changed for me. So I try to remember what it was like to be a student, and I try to apply that to how I'm going to roll out an activity or how I'm going to assess them. And everything's very skill based for me. I want them to know stuff. Sometimes I like to do an interview instead of like a pen and paper test. Come on over and chat with me for 90 seconds. I'll ask you a couple things, and based on how you respond to that, I'll kind of know if you're picking up what I'm putting down. So those are some of the skills, I think. Just being, if you're very skill based and you do these like interviews whenever you get to your benchmarks, then I think any teacher can kind of feel a little bit more confident. Because if I give a paper test, I don't know if they cheated. I don't know if they copied off of someone else. Like if I give a multiple choice, I don't know if they're just a really good guesser. But if I ask them an open-ended question, then I have an opportunity to sort of be like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. And so I feel like that is really helpful for me. And that's sort of how I guide them with that stuff. So, yeah, so the school year is going really good. Very excited about it. So another thing I want to talk about this week is so over the weekend, we had something happen at a Phillies game. I'm sure you guys have heard of it by now, but last Friday, September 5th, I believe, there was a Phillies-Marlins game, and Harrison Bader hit a home run, I think in the like left field or something like that. And so, classic, like somebody was going to grab it, they almost caught it in the air, it popped out of their hand or something to that effect, and now everybody's scrambling, loose ball. Some guy picks it up, typical Coles Cash dude, dad of the year, got some New Balances on, and he grabs it, in the scurry of it popping out of the hand, and then he rolls back to his kid and puts it in his kid's glove, gives him a hug, and it's like this cute moment. Apparently it was the kid's birthday. Well, 10 seconds later, the woman who was leaning over the row where there was nobody seated in front of her, who had like hit her hand or she caught it or she bobbled it or whatever, well, she was miffed that she didn't have that ball. And, she looks like she's in her 40s or something. And she then comes over the chair, goes down the aisle, and you see her like grab the dad who's like hugging his kid. She like grabs his bicep to like pull him towards her because she probably had been screaming at him the whole time. You took that from me. And the dad, if you go back and watch this, it is hysterical. She pulls him, and the dad does one of these. Like he looks like somebody. You ever wake somebody out of a dead sleep, and they're just in that moment of what? So his like hands are up, like fight or flight, but he doesn't look like he has a right hook. He looks like he has a swipe or no swiping. Like this bull looks like he's never been in a fight a day in his life. And so, but then some of the commentators were even joking online that he didn't even look like he was protecting his kid anymore. He was just in shock. Um, but then I guess she's just yelling at him that you took it from me. So he points to his kid's glove, and so he like literally takes it out of the kid's glove, hands it to her, and just does this hand motion, like whatever, get away from me. It's not worth the trouble. Which I'm pretty sure all of her ex-husbands have probably felt the same way when they were mitigating their divorces. And so this poor woman, okay, whatever. She showed her, she had a moment, right? So now there's a couple schools of thought. I make a video because I think it's funny, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, everybody was calling her Philly Karen, and I'm thinking, oh, this is funny because she should clearly know the rules, right? What are the rules when you're scrambling for a ball in the stands and you're at a baseball game? And in my mind, one rule comes to play: finders keepers, losers weepers. So I was like, oh, this would be funny. If she's a Karen, then she's like an HOA president. So the only way to fight fire with her is to state the rules. So I make a video being like, well, someone should tell her subsection A, paragraph 2 clearly states finders keepers, losers weepers. And then it started coming out like people were really getting heated about this. And so then I guess I'll explain what I did, and then I'll kind of go back and talk a little bit about my commentary of why I did it. So then I start making another video, and I make a video because everybody says she was a school admin. So there's this rumor that floats out there that she's a school admin. I'm like, oh, this is great. Classic. She's a school admin. So now I make a funny video talking about all the things that she did that teachers would say they don't like about certain admin. And a little punchline every 6 to 7 seconds, just a way to crack some jokes. And so I played this video, and it just goes bonkers. Like we're talking, I made it like, I don't know, Saturday morning. By Saturday evening, it's already at 500,000. By Saturday night, it's at 1 million. Now it's at like 2.5 million. And like, it was just funny. It was just like all these, joking about, oh, of course she's a principal, blah, blah, blah. Then it comes out somewhere in the midst of all of that, as it's going crazy, we get information that says, oh no, the school district that apparently whoever they thought they saw, because I wasn't even saying her name. I didn't even know what their name was at that point. But the school district in Jersey releases a thing saying the person known as Philly Karen has never been an employee for us. Any employee from our district clearly would have caught that ball and avoided the entire situation, which I thought was an amazing response. So then I post that out because I had already had the other video going, and I was like, oh, well, that was a good video. It was fun. It had a lot of jokes in it. I'm not a media source. I'm not a journalism source. My moniker literally says comedy in it. So I just post what the Jersey one did as an update and said, hey, it turns out, she wasn't this. But then it comes out that they thought she was another woman who was a nurse. So like, oh, this is funny. I'll make a joke about she's like the nurse from Misery or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And, and then like the videos and stills they were posting, it kind of made her look like people were joking about her being like Cruella de Vil and stuff. Or Chip Chantry put a thing out that said she was Cruella de Fils, which was hysterical. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. So I was making a video, and I'm like, she's apparently a nurse, or I don't know. But all we really want to know is where is she hiding all those Dalmatians? So, just again, lighthearted satire, having some fun with a socially awkward event. And then that video is crazy. But when I look at the comments, people it was really interesting. And people were just having fun and enjoyed it. Laugh emoji for what it was. Some people were using it as like a political thing. And I'm like, our country is in a state right now, in my personal opinion, where we're finding a reason for anything to be indicative of things. And when I thought of the event and when I thought about what actually happened in the event with this woman, I felt like she was a little bit of a bully. I did. I know she was probably disappointed. She thought it had it. And it kind of reminded me of maybe not winning an election and having a hard time with that. And I was seeing a lot of like people still not being able to admit things that happened. And I think a lot of it I did understand some of those comments because I think we're seeing a culture where people are very bully-like nowadays, and it's almost okay because at the top of the chain, you go to the White House, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, like, he comes off as a bully, right? He calls people names. He was saying former presidents had dementia level, not like saying ridiculous things. Now that's the president of the United States saying that. Right. I'm a comedy account talking, making jokes on purpose. I'm not running for office. I have no political affiliation. I'm just making jokes, but I can understand people take such a stance on things. And if somebody's forgiving her actions, that to me is like, man, you're forgiving a bully's actions because she just bullied that guy. And yeah, it's disappointing. You didn't catch the ball, but you're not entitled to catching a ball. How many times have you been to a baseball game? I've been to plenty of baseball games. I've never caught a ball. And I'm a huge baseball fan. Would I be disappointed if it hit my hand and somebody got in front of me? Yeah, absolutely. But would I hop over there and go and demand it back? No, it's like a bonus thing. If you get it, great. So it just blew up into this crazy thing, and the comments were crazy. And so I tried to take a lot of them in stride and just kind of poke fun and be like, people were like, that's not true. How dare you spread misinformation? I'm like, yeah, my account doesn't say Jay Yoder hard-nosed journalism. It says Jay Yoder comedy, okay? So it's satire. It's a socially awkward situation. I'm bringing some levity, right? It's another thing a buddy of mine, Chip Chancery, talks a lot about. We've talked a lot about. We run some sessions for teachers, and we do a portion where he talks about levity. All we're doing is making light of a very volatile and socially awkward situation because we're in an area now where we have to be able to laugh about stuff. Louis C.K. just put out a podcast clip. He was on a podcast with some other comedians, and he was just saying what comedy is. Comedy is like we're in a room and we're agreeing. Everybody in this room is agreeing that for right now, we're suspending how we feel about things, and we're allowed to laugh and poke fun at things. That's what comedy is. It's an art form that survived through all of this time because we all agreed that sometimes we just need to laugh about things. And that's where I'm coming from. When I posted all those videos, they were all fun. So like the third one I did was just to be outrageously ridiculous so that clearly nobody knows. I'm not trying to be a news source. I ended up saying, I ended up talking about how I know she's not an admin. She's not a nurse. So for now, we're just waiting for the DNA test results to come back from Maury Povich. But we do know one thing. She's been spotted with Bigfoot. These are both blurry legends that nobody can prove their existence. And again, just having fun. Nobody cares. And somebody's like, stop doxing her. I'm like, first of all, look up the word doxing, because doxing is like you're releasing their address, their name. Never once said her name, what they thought her name was. The worst I did was allude to a profession that they thought, because it fit my niche and it fit the comedy and it helped me deliver some punchlines and make light of a situation. But it made me realize when we look at stuff online and the way we intake information as a culture, as a society now, is the lines are so blurry. And so like even with my students, like one of the things I have to help them do is sort of suss out what material is factual and what isn't. And so even with AI, we had a really interesting talk at the beginning of the school year, and a consultant came in to talk to the teachers about the potential and the dangers of AI. And he just said, hey, everybody hears ChatGPT, and we've talked about it on this show before. It doesn't necessarily mean it's giving you the truth of the matter. It's just kicking out a response based on an algorithm that they put together, and it's giving you something. And so you don't have a source there. So you got to be careful. But that's how all of our information is. And I know there's other AI models, like Perplexity is another one you might have heard people talking about. Burger King, McDonald's, right? ChatGPT, Perplexity. And with Perplexity, what I liked is when I would ask it a question and I would say like, hey, do we know who Philly Karen is? It would immediately start citing sources. And you then could click on the source and go to it, kind of like what a Wikipedia was designed. Wikipedia was the human version of that, where you're supposed to but you were getting a lot of circular reporting, meaning that people were like just saying something for saying it because they heard it, right? Kind of like the nurse and the admin and whatever. So, I get that. There's a level of misinformation out there, and we love the term fake news. I wonder where that came from. And so when you foster this, and when it comes from the top down like it's coming right now, we get a very volatile thing where we can't even laugh about something silly like a joke. And when that happens, that to me is we're getting a little scary, So I'm not, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I rode the Karen wave for the weekend. It is kind of crazy that we still don't know who she is, this poor woman. And so I was kind of trying to be like a human and think in that level, yeah, somebody's like, well, she made a mistake. I'm like, no, she made a choice. She made several choices, and none of them were good. And we're living in a society that's being very forgiving to people who act that way. And I think people like that need to really be shown for who they are, right? But unfortunately, she's been this kind of pariah, scapegoat, whatever metaphor you want to use, for the fact that we're all fed up that the people at the top are acting like they're acting. Because it's hard for me as an adult, as a teacher, as a parent, to look at my daughters and say, no, you can't act like that, even though so and so is acting like that, right? We create sort of double standard, right? So, and that's sort of where we're at with it, where it's like, well, you know what? I'm here to joke about that, but also I think make some social commentary on that. And so, when people were coming at me in the comments about certain stuff, I'm like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm a comedy account. This is not, if you're coming here for your news, then you need to go somewhere else. The metaverse is a big place. Keep scrolling, cowboy. I was just telling Mitch here, my producer for the day, and I was just telling him like all the craziness of people like commenting. Like one guy's like, yeah, man, I'm going to send you some money because clearly you need to get some action. And he didn't say action. He said a part of the lady that he spelled ridiculously. He spelled it Poosie, and it was amazing. And then it was all U's with U's, and some was SUM. And I'm like, he's like, just don't get an underage prostitute. And I'm like, that is a wild comment for my video. But I said also, I'm not above taking a fool's money. So I gave him my Venmo handle, So it's just so interesting to hear the people that would then jump to making it a political thing. And, I think it says a lot about how tender we all are. So, you think about that girl that I mentioned earlier in the episode that came in the first day of school, and she was like, can I retake tests? Like, I was like, who hurt you, And that's the same thing I'm thinking about all these people that are leaving these comments on my face. I'm like, who hurt you? Like, where are you at? Or are you just so in a rabbit hole and you're not living your life that you're like living through your phone, right? Because like you can really get dark. I mean, here's another thing. I'm sure some of you watch this. I spent some time the other day and watched this, the new Netflix documentary that came out where it was a true story about, and it was this like a teenage catfish, I think it was called, or Unknown Sender was maybe the name of it. And it was all about this couple that was in the small town. I forget what city it was in, but it was a small town, and this, typical two athlete kind of cute couple met in middle school, dating into high school, and they started getting a group chat from an unknown number that was like trying to break them up and like saying like, oh, he doesn't want you, and this person kept sending these messages, and it kind of stopped for 11 months, and then it happened again, and they didn't know if it was another person in the school trying to like, create a rift in their relationship. And the FBI at one point gets involved because of the vulgar comments. I mean, it was insane. And if you haven't watched it yet, then stop listening. But at the end of the day, it was the girl's mother who was sending all of these things to her saying she's worthless, ugly, anorexic. One point she told him to kill herself. And then the woman then ends up going to jail for like a year and a half on harassment charges. But like when they finally figured it out and the FBI finally traced the IP addresses from Verizon to figure out it was from the mom, well, the mom had like lost her job, didn't tell the dad. And so she was home all day and she was just getting lost down this rabbit hole. And so she was like, she said that she felt like it wasn't her in the moment. She was like putting a mask on and just saying this stuff. But the things, all the text messages in the documentary, they said were the actual text messages. And the one principal was like, they made a 53-year-old man blush. And you were sending that to your 16-year-old daughter? Like, it was bonkers. And so it made me think if somebody's able to do that, and then they have this tool that's like a loaded weapon. It's like a loaded emotional weapon. And they're able to just push that out there to their own daughter? I mean, and then just disassociate and almost not... like, that's where when I think about answering back some of these comments, I'm like, oh, I got to be careful. I might step on a landmine here. I might be finding one of the loons like that woman from the documentary. So, I think that's why, teaching my kids and teaching about internet safety, it's really important to do those things. But at the same time, there's still so much potential with the internet and so much potential with AI that, you're going to step on a landmine. Hey, if you're going to make an omelet, you break a few eggs. So it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. But it's been a lot of fun to kind of play with that and kind of see the social commentary, because we talked a lot about AI here in the past, and so I just thought some of these kind of illustrated that. But yeah, it's been a wild week, guys. So well, I appreciate you taking the jaywalk with me today, solo. Every Tuesday we drop, so make sure you share, comment, like, feed the algorithm. You don't know how important it is to just share an episode or just say like, leave a comment, leave a review on Apple, wherever you're listening. It means a lot because we put time into this, money into this, effort into this, and sometimes it feels like we're talking into a void. So anything you could do to engage with us, we would love that. Ideas, things you want to hear us talk about, we would love that. So check us out next week. Thank you for jaywalking.